Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Ves Sobot, sitting in for Jocelyn Bamford. Every week, we introduce a thought leader, tell their story, unpack the challenges of doing their craft, and explore ideas for job growth and prosperity. This week, we have someone who has spent most of his adult life dedicated to serving. He was an officer in the Canadian Army for 27 years, retiring as Lieutenant Colonel. He was posted 19 times to operations in Germany, Egypt, the former Yugoslavia, the United States, and across Canada. In 2000, he became part of what is now called the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. Following 9/11, he led the development and implementation of Alberta's Crisis Management Counter-Terrorist Plan. He became the head of the EMA in 2004 and led the provincial response to the devastating floods in June of 2005. He also led the development of the 2005 Provincial Pandemic Influenza Plan. If that wasn't enough, he also has a bachelor and master's degree in electrical engineering and is a graduate of both the Canadian Land Forces Command in Kingston and in Toronto. David Redman, welcome to Canadian Innovators.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for making the time, especially I see you have your bunker there in Edmonton, Alberta.
Yes, we do. We live in a tower right downtown, and the sun is just coming up here.
Tremendous. David, you've had a wealth of experience dealing with disasters, pandemics. Countless resources have been spent planning and preparing for these things. Many now say that the way most governments in Canada and around the world, quite frankly, dealt with COVID was maybe haphazard, maybe deadly. In the fullness of time since the pandemic, what would you say? Did they follow the plans that you had created, put on the shelf, ready to go?
No, absolutely not. They did exactly the opposite. If I can take you back to 2020.
Please do.
Every province and territory in Canada had a pandemic influenza plan. And they had written them, and the federal government had one as well. And they were based on a couple of emergency management principles. First of all, you never use fear in an emergency. And the plans were built such that the elected governments were in charge and that they would do a cross-government response that fully included the private sector. So those plans were written, they were based on best practices worldwide, and incorporated all of the latest results from previous pandemics, because we need to remember, pandemics aren't new. They've happened before, they'll happen again, and the aim in a pandemic is to get through them with the least disruption to society. They have a complete planning process that's based on emergency management and using the emergency management skills to bring everyone together when a new virus shows up. The first thing you do is assess the virus that's impacting you. And in this case, it was SARS-CoV-2, and I emphasize 2 because this wasn't the first SARS virus we'd seen, it was the second. And this virus in particular, when you do the threat analysis on it, was dangerous in particular to people over the age of 65 with severe multiple comorbidities. It was simply the same level of threat to people under 60 years old as seasonal influenza. And in fact, as you go down in age category, it became less and less of a risk to people in lower and lower ages. So the response should have been tailored to the actual virus, and the plans that have been pre-written implemented, again, to cause the least disruption to society. In those plans, things like how to help business through while they had sick employees, not trying to close business, trying to help business maintain their operations right through a pandemic. So I would put it to you that the plans were completely thrown away that had been done before based on best practices and based on all the technology and knowledge that we had acquired from all previous pandemics.
Extraordinary. You point out that business need not have been impacted in the way that it was. And many, I think, would agree. Let's pick up on that thought right after the break and see what we've learned from that.